So the more entrepreneurs can step out of their ego and into their authentic, as cheesy as that sounds, I mean it. If you can
Hallelujah.
let your ego leave the building, there's space for it eventually. You can get the boat, you can get the condo, you can get the little villa in Italy. That's all great. There's time for that. But there's this term I love on social called the real rich, and it's like nobody knows anymore who is successful. How do you define success?
Yeah. Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando Leduc, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on when you are consuming this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, back with another one. Tay Villegas in the house from Tampa. How are you?
I'm really well. Yes, Taylor from Tampa. Nice to meet you, Armando, and to be on the show.
Thank you for being here. I never know sometimes how people are introduced to this show at this point, and I know we had a conversation about it in sort of that pre-interview, but it's at this point, it's just all like, you're supposed to be here, we're supposed to meet, it's supposed to happen this way. So however you have come into the ecosystem, I am so happy that you're here. And I love what you're doing. I really, as we move into 2024 and 2025 and here on out, the need for your services are going to be more and more and more. So I'm ready to dive in. This is something that I talk about on the daily. So let's dive right in and talk about two of the companies that you have are 12 Tables and Sunny
Collabs. Sunny
Collabs.
Collabs. Yep. So 12 Tables is an exclusive agency of independents and small agencies that work together on project work. So I've worked for the better part of a decade as a strategic advisor, and we all know that strategy is one thing, but execution's where it's at. And I found myself kind of just like talk about like a women of prayer when you would go to outsource to different agencies or different freelancers as that marketplace is really growing and surging, quite frankly. And I wasn't always satisfied with the end executable. So 2019 served us well. I conducted hundreds of interviews with different freelancers and small agencies to put together this like small and mighty team across 12 disciplines of business, thus 12 tables. And so 12 tables is like my arsenal, if you will, to assist on the executable post strategic planning. And it has been just such a fun journey. Sunny Collabs actually hired me as a strategic advisor about 2 years ago. And then before I know it, if the shoe fits, wear it. They also were a part of the collective as a content partner, and we've since partnered up. So I handle a lot of the operational capacity of Sunny Collabs, including our, EOS modeling.
And I talk with my clients about this all the time in terms of implementation, the speed of implementation, how to implement. It's one thing to implement fast, right? But it's also dangerous to implement fast things that are not correct, which is why it's super important to be listening to the people that have had track records and that have done the work. Talk about some, I know you guys work with Rob Gronkowski. Talk about some other notables and case studies of people that you've helped.
We do. So Sunny has had just a really fun year, if you will. The agency's growing, and rightfully so. We are truly that one-stop content shop. You and I have talked about this before, Armando, right? The people at the top are collaborating. And so we work with agencies to small businesses and established brands, from consumer product goods, restaurants, fitness centers, you name it. We love what we do in terms of content, video, and photography. So we've worked with brands like White Claw, Carrabba's, a lot of different malls, different corporate owned, like Hyde Park Village, which is a notable part of town in South Tampa. If you've been to Tampa, you've likely been to Hyde Park. If you haven't, you've gotta go check it out. But we're just having so much fun with what we're doing on a daily basis. So yeah.
So are you guys using influencers to build or use them to like create content for small businesses and startups?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have an entire network of influencers and UGC creators. So we have a production house that's fully stacked, and that's your photographers, videographers. But we do have an entire pool of influencers that we pull in for different shots or leverage for different collaborative opportunities with brands because that's a need. So for example, Rob just opened, if you're paying attention to his social, his current Instagram icon is him outside of the drive-through window at Green Lane, which their claim to fame is everything's healthy and it's all under $10. It is so delicious. If you're in Tampa, there's 2 locations off of Gandy and one on Dale Mabry. Hit the drive-through, but they actually contacted us for the grand opening, and we sent about 50 influencers to that grand opening over a couple of days to grab content, post, and create some virality.
That's very cool. And so you guys handle the logistics of
Handle
that?
all the logistics. So we're completely turnkey. Somebody comes to us with a want or a desire or a vision, and we will fully execute. Some clients naturally prefer to be more involved than others, but we always say you can be as involved as you want to be.
So somebody and who are you guys helping these days? Like who's a good market for you? I know you were talking about startups.
Yeah, so startups is really on the 12 tables side. Not to say that startups don't need great content because they do at some point. But I myself, my background is actually in tech. So I entered the corporate space back in 2010. And I really stretched my legs at the very start of IoT, right? When people were just finding out about what that even meant, when you're connecting all these different technologies. And I found myself acting as what I call an entrepreneur within the organization. I was constantly working my way out of a job, improving, refining, refactoring something. And before I knew it, I was bored. I was bored working on the same industry type and in the same business model, but yet I had all of this understanding as to how do CRMs work, how do you build different organizations, how do you make sure that communication is happening fluidly, right? Like north, south, east, west throughout the organization. And so that led me to opening up my own advisory firm. And from there, like I mentioned before, it became very clear that strategy is one thing and it's such a critical piece to have. I have startups that come to us, for example, and they've already produced packaging. For example, let's say it's an e-com beauty brand. They've already produced packaging, but yet they have no brand kit. So they have no idea what their brand is yet to be, but yet they have all of this product. So they're working backwards.
Mm.
So I have 2 goals in my advisory work. One goal is to make sure that I have found them, or they found me rather, right up front so that we can create that strategic plan. So they are then second to that is taking the right bite out of the apple. So if you go on any of my LinkedIn, you might see that there's me with this red apple, right? And the purpose of that is apple is knowledge, and that knowledge is your business concept. Like that apple in its totality is your business. And it is my responsibility, it's my job when we're working together to figure out how many bites is your apple and what's the first bite to take. And that's as simply as I can put it. And then when it comes to plugging into 12 tables, it's very simple. We are the general contractor of an exclusive gig ecosystem. So we are hired by a business to not only strategically plan a particular project, campaign, or the whole business itself during that particular phase, but then we're coming in and hiring those subcontractors, which I call isn't an outsourcing model, it's called central sourcing because we're acting as the project liaison.
Are you,
Typically you would have all of these these people in a freelance space working independent of each other.
Mhm.
So therefore the director, whoever's managing those outsourced vendors and resources, has to know what they're talking about, right, in order to manage properly and have the capacity to manage properly. And most of the time they don't. And so that's where 12 tables comes into play as a major benefit, because we're doing that for them.
So you're a fractional COO?
You could put it that way. It's not just operations that we're covering, right? Because we're handling branding from ground up, to doing brand reskins, to building major applications. So one of our development partners was actually the creator of Zelle. So we're dealing with really high fidelity gig workers and small agencies that still have a heart for startups. That's the best way I could put it.
Gotcha. How did you find this niche?
Yeah, I mean, really, the demand came out of my own problem, right? Like any good startup, it's like your own personal problem. And I can give that example, I'm sure you could as well, a million times over. But my particular problem was I need to find these agencies and freelancers that are micro niched, masters of their domain, if you will, that can handle the execution of the strategy plan. So, for example, if I'm saying, hey, we need to establish a brand up front, we need to do a high fidelity prototype of your technology, instead of them saying, well, who do I hire to do that? We'll bring in the right partners for budget considerations and for what that raise is going to be. And we work incredibly fast, because every person coming, we say, like, you stay the head of your table and we just pull up a seat.
That's
We're
cool.
going to work really efficiently, because the person creating your brand is directly communicating within the person that's going to design the technology, let's say, who's working hand in hand with the person that's going to be building the website, who's working hand in hand with you. So it really becomes a very collaborative effort, which is the first time that that's being done in the gig economy. Typically, you would have all of these resources and projects working in silo.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem. And we work with a lot of attorneys, right? And I
Okay.
see that all the time, because I'm like, one of the first things that I ask when we start working with attorneys is like, give me the numbers to your vendors so that we're all on the same page.
Yes.
What do you
Yes.
mean? This is like the first, it was like the
You're a
first time
rare
they had,
breed.
it was like the first time they had ever heard this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
are they not communicating? Like, we
Well,
absolutely need to be talking to the web designer. Like,
100%. And you know what? I have seen this firsthand. So it happens that, we'll have a strategic session, a strategy session, and then we will inquire, who's your team? And that includes your outsourced vendors, like your third parties. And when we go to contact them just to ask certain questions, they're on the defense. And
oh
that's
yeah,
when I know that they're not at the pinnacle of their career, because the people that are within 12 tables, they're not getting defensive, right? They're already there. They're at the pinnacle in their career, and either they're interested in the project and they have a passion for it, and they're going to say, yes, I want to accept that RFP, if you will,
Mhm.
or, hey, that's not the project. It's not within our wheelhouse. And then we just go to the next person. So there's a lot of autonomy within 12 tables, but I see that all the time. They're so defensive, and that's a huge red flag to me, because
Yeah.
we have to be collaborating for it to work.
Let me ask you this: how are you doing? How are you recruiting and finding and headhunting these people?
So it's very simple. I, over COVID, just spent a ton of time on my cell phone, like many of us, with different intentions naturally. But my intention was to find different brands, different pieces of tech that I thought were exciting, and to find out who they used as their partner. And so that's how I started to find, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with all of these brands. Coincidentally, they're all using the same brand agency. So I'm contacting that
Nice.
brand agency and saying, hey, I think we could build something super special together. Or I'm looking at media placements and finding who was the media buyer for that. That's brilliant. Or content campaigns. Oh my gosh, who created that? Right. So I was almost reverse engineering everything. And then I hosted this vision sharing meeting with about 50 different agencies and independents. And now we're 27, we're 27 deep at this
Nice.
point. There's 27 of us.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
Super
Uh,
fun.
yeah. And then it's just like the Rolodex, and you're just the connector.
Yeah, it's kind of like puppeteering in a way, but
Yeah.
everybody has a voice, right? What's also really interesting is when we were interviewing on agencies, not only are we vetting portfolio, but we were vetting that the people were nice. And I know that that sounds funny, but at some point in your career, you genuinely like that becomes more important.
Hallelujah.
I'm like, I just want people that pick up the phone, that are collaborative, that are nice people. And it was really easy to weed out who would be a troublesome in a team setting,
Agreed.
in a team environment. So, team oriented persons, accountability, growth oriented, all of that was really a part of the competencies that we were looking for to fulfill the collective.
I love that. I love that a lot. We're sort of in growth mode too. What we're trying to what we're doing. What CRM do you use?
So, I mean, I'm CRM agnostic, be it, a technologist myself in the sense that I'm familiar with so many.
Gotcha.
But the CRM that I'm the most loyal to is HubSpot.
Gotcha. So we've been using Go High Level, and
Okay,
so what
yeah.
I'm doing is I'm creating landing pages
Yep.
per person because like we're doing not necessarily at the level that you guys are doing because we're creating the content as far as like the filming of the podcast, the organic social, customer journey videos, editing, and then distributing the content,
Right.
right? For the other stuff, we have other people. But so what I'm trying to do is because we have clients from across the country is create landing pages per per person, right?
Per
Videographer,
niche.
yeah, per niche. So videographer, editor, writers, project managers,
Yes.
social media managers, graphic designers, and then creating funnels for each thing, right?
Smart.
And then that way we can like weed people out was like, hey, fill out this form, watch this video. Okay, now watch my webinar on what we do.
Yes.
Okay, now send us a 2-minute video on why you should work here. And then through that weeding out process, I'm hoping this just
I
an
almost don't
experiment.
call that weeding out. To me, what you're doing is you're laying roots.
Yeah,
Truly, you're laying roots because it's there is a misconception that especially in a lot of startups that everyone's your audience, right?
right.
And so what you're doing is confirming that everyone is not your audience. Everybody has a very distinct, very different problem of the hour or problem of the day. And so who clicks on videography because that's the resource that they need may very well end up in your podcast landing page funnel, but for right now their imminent need is video.
Correct. No, yeah, I love that. So a lot of entrepreneurs listen to us. I always like to give some like tips and tricks, something that they could take from this podcast and start doing it. Like,
Yeah.
what are some things that is like very at the top of your list that you've experienced that have like changed the game for you?
Yeah. I think some of the best advice that I have for entrepreneurs is going to come from what I've personally experienced. And that is to step away from what I call is shiny penny syndrome.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs, they want to, once they've got the website up, they've got some business cards, they've just made it. So they're at every networking event, they're schmoozing everybody, everybody has a dollar sign on their head, and they're not creating or allowing space to create for very intentional interactions based on your strategic goals. And they're just exhausting themselves.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you're at everything and everything's important, then nothing's important. So I always say, like, get clear. And, a dream has to be dissected in the sense of milestones and metrics. It has to be measurable in order for you to meet that goal. And so the way that you're living your lifestyle as a whole as an entrepreneur is very important. You know,
Yeah.
I work with a ton of entrepreneurs locally and across the country, and I see it. They know somebody that's going to be able to get their app that's half baked at this point on the screen at Times Square. That's very exciting. That's amazing. It is
What is it
not a
going to do for
profitable
you?
strategy. That is an
Right.
ego strategy.
Yeah.
So the more entrepreneurs can step out of their ego and into their authentic, as cheesy as that sounds, I mean it. If you can
Hallelujah.
let your ego leave the building There's space for it eventually. You can get the boat, you can get the condo, you can get the little villa in Italy. That's all great. There's time for that. But there's this term I love on social called the real rich, and it's like nobody knows anymore who is successful. How do you define success?
Yeah. I think I think success comes from authenticity, like you were saying, right? Like just really being able to live authentically, unapologetically
On your terms.
on your terms and be okay
Totally.
with it. You know, a lot of the obstacles that I encounter with a lot of prospects that we're going, "Hey, we need to work on your personal brand. This is what we're going to do." And they're all suffering from this imposter syndrome
Yeah.
of who cares? Who cares about what I say? The social media is saturated. Like what's the point? What's the purpose, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I think you guys are thinking about this all wrong, you
Yes,
know?
analysis paralysis in entrepreneurship and small business in general is it's at large. It's
Yeah.
everywhere, and it needs to be contained. But it's an inside job, 100%. And what I would say to entrepreneurs that are giving that type of feedback is there is an audience for everyone. I have been that person that's thought to myself, well, what do I got to share that everybody else doesn't already know? But then I'll host a strategy session and I have a text from an entrepreneur saying, hey, how do we create an equity plan with you so you stay on board indefinitely? They're not saying that because I didn't add value. So those little pieces, like that can't be a lie, right? That message is real.
Are you
So
doing that? Are you offering equity
yeah,
points? Yeah, this is the second time I've heard like a marketing company do this. First time I heard it with Brian Hong, who we work with, but
yeah.
he does like SEO and stuff.
So we don't do that on the Sunny Collabs side. It's not saying that that's a strategy we would never lean into, but this is more my personal portfolio with different accounts that need strategic advisory and somebody that's really close to them to make sure that they're making good use of their money, that they're not getting bamboozled. Because, for example, let's say an entrepreneur has a great idea, right? And they need to develop an app. How are they to know how much the app's supposed to cost? How are they to actually know an appropriate timeline or a get to market strategy? So if they start going to several app houses and to several marketing companies, they are going to end up like being blood in a pool of sharks
Yeah.
and they won't know the difference. So they'll likely go with the people that are probably the most reasonably priced and pretty easy to work with, but they have no idea the fidelity of work, how that's actually going to transition into the out product, right? The output. So that's really where 12 Tables to me is almost like a philanthropic business because we become the knowledge for them. We're managing that on their behalf. We're holding their partners accountable on their behalf. So I always say I'm really in this like charitable position.
No, yeah, for sure. Do you, when you're working with somebody, how are you figuring out, yeah, this is probably the next thing that I want to, it's a worthwhile endeavor. How are you deciding what's a worthwhile endeavor?
Yeah, so that comes with time. I hate to say it, but it's like it comes with age, but it does. It comes with experience because, when I first started out in advisory, I would do what they call sweat equity deals, which is where you're not taking any retainage. And we're talking, 7 years ago. You're not taking any retainage. You're just taking, here's my hours. You double down on that rate for the risk factor by some kind of industry multiple. And then that eventually converts into equity. But what I eventually learned is I can't always control who I'm in business with. So
Right.
I have a longer vetting process and the deal has to excite me, not the monetary side. And obviously, yes, that is important, but the actual purpose of the technology or purpose of the product. So, for
Right.
example, recently in my portfolio is this family that's from an Ayurvedic community in India just purchased all this farmland. And she herself, as a mother, couldn't find any products that were released in the US and accessible that had clean beauty care for women and children, specifically moms and kids. And so she started to formulate her own product right from the farmland. And they're creating this, it's just this incredible beauty line that's needed in the US. There's a market for it, and it has a really interesting origin story. Like, she remembers her grandmother's sunscreen for her was yogurt on her face, and you don't hear that locally. We're like copper tone and, all different sunblock. That's not only not good for the ocean, but it's not good for ourselves, because a lot of them are saturated in different chemicals. So I had a direct passion to that. I'm a mom. I have children. I don't yet have a beauty product in my portfolio. I love the origin story. They're already doing the thing. They take advice really easily. We've worked together now for 6 months. Now I'm ready to make a decision that would align us for a long-term goal. And it was the same with Sunny Collabs.
That's really cool. So you are in an advisory position with Sunny Collabs?
So now I am still in an advisory position, but I do hang my hat as their chief operating officer. So with Sunny Collabs, I dive deeper in bed, if you will, with Sunny. Kayla Goldman's the founder of Sunny. If you know her, you love her, you're obsessed. She is just a true visionary in every sense of the word. And we worked together for a year and a half before we made a decision to make sure that it was an indefinite alignment.
Yeah, I think that that's important. So you're the integrator and she's the
I
visionary.
am. I'm the integrator in Sunny Collabs. Exactly. So if you're familiar with EOS, I'm the integrator, and Kayla's the visionary. And together we're rocket fuel.
Yeah, I heard that. Are you guys, how are your L10s going?
Our L10s are running pretty well. Sometimes they are getting, 7.5 ratings. We have probably a systemic problem of most people for EOS, that when we get to our headlines and our rocks and our to-dos, instead of just sticking to the script and saying like on track, off track, we're
You
like,
get caught
well,
up.
and maybe let me explain myself. Are you available this Tuesday? And before you know it, we are off track. Nobody. So as the integrator, I need to put more of a smackdown, because I am the facilitator of those meetings. So the ratings do essentially lay on my shoulders.
Did you ever read the book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team?
You know it. That was actually
Oh
one of
yeah.
my first managerial reads
Yeah.
from a consultant that we had in my corporate career. What was your thoughts on the read?
Oh, it revolutionized what we did, especially with our leadership team. Because one, so I have my sister works with me. She's
Fun.
one of my project managers, and she's older than me. So
Little nepotism doesn't
it's
hurt
this.
everybody.
Well, yeah, no, and look, it works. But we're fiery, and and sometimes my COO is like, oh my God, is it going to be like this? But it's that healthy
Yes.
conflict
Yes.
that gets things done, and the
Yes.
accountability, and having an organization that is open enough
Yes.
to go, hey, call me out on what I'm not doing, and I'm
That's
going to
right.
call you out on what you're not doing, and I hope you don't get offended by it, but this isn't working. You're
Yes.
not producing, and
Yes.
maybe you should not be doing that job.
Yes.
And that's okay too.
I love that you're talking about being a realist. I identify with that so much. I can be a little bit of a Simon Cowell in the business world, if you will. Like,
Sure.
not everything impresses me, and that's okay. And I'll be in certain strategy sessions, and I already know that this is a project that I'm going to hand off, or something like that. Be it maybe the founders. I feel like everything that's being said is going, in one ear and out the other, because and I tell my kids this. So I have 4 kids, and I tell them, I'm like, stupid people know everything. Like, please understand that it's stupid people that know everything. Smart
Right.
people know they don't know everything, and they're forever students. So that doesn't mean that experts, don't know what's going on in their field, but guaranteed those experts are constantly learning something new
100%.
about their field and from other people. But I love that being a realist, because I'm not here to just shake your hand, give you a proposal, take your money, kind of like the pay for value exchange. I'm not in that. I'm in like the career of, I'm interested in living my life with passion.
Yeah.
So if there's not alignment, or I don't believe in what you're doing, or I don't believe you're the right founders to make it happen, it's likely that I'm going to pull the kind of like Shark Tank, like, I'm out, right? I don't want to get too far deep, because it's hard to exit when you're too far in.
I had to fire a client a couple of weeks ago. It's a high paying client too. But
Yep,
it just wasn't in alignment. And,
totally.
and everybody was just so happy that this person was gone. And I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
mean, your team
well,
health is
damn.
so important,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they talk about that a ton in EOS. It is so important, and that healthy adversity inside of leadership teams and inside the whole organization. I mean, that's where it's at. Like if you currently have your phone ringing and it's an employee talking about another employee, like you have likely a systemic issue
Yeah.
because it's probable that the employee calling you, if you ask them, did you already speak to so and so, they're going to say, no, I'm coming to you first.
Right.
And I remember when I worked for an incredible company, Power Design, they're one of the largest MEP firms in the country. And I can't say enough good things about what they've instilled in me as a leader and as a contributor to society, if you will. Our CEO, Mitch, would always talk about, like, I don't care if you have a phone on your desk, if that person's also in office, this was also when everything was in office, you need to walk over to the desk, even if you just need something small, and you need to create that relationship, that belly to belly relationship. And I think that that's a really high value.
Yeah. 100%. Hey, Tay, how do people find you, and what's the best way they can work with you?
Well, you reached out on LinkedIn, so clearly that's working. I get a
LinkedIn
lot of
works.
LinkedIn, but I just sit there and I'll scan through like 200 LinkedIn messages in 20 minutes and just flag the ones that I want to kind of look deeper into. So I can tell when I'm being sold. So you can reach me on LinkedIn, but if you're going to be scammy, then you're not going to hear from me. But if you're looking for a legitimate inquiry, feel free to go to sunnycollabs.com if you're looking for content, and then also 12tables.com as well.
And I'm to that point, and I'm gonna reinforce this idea of when you guys are using DMs for social, any social media, if it's LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, and you're wanting to cold outreach to somebody, you've got to create content first
Yes.
so that you have something there.
Yes.
Because people are going to go, who is this person? And if they click on you and you don't have any content and there's
Yes.
nothing, you're going to get ignored. You're going to get ignored. And
And
so
stop using bots that use people's name, because forever I
yeah,
had Taylor Villegas, and I'm a certified chief product owner and a chief scrum master, naturally on the tech side. And so I had my credentialing, so I could always tell when somebody was just putting me into some kind of funnel, because it would be like Taylor Villegas dash CSPO dash CSM. I'm like, next.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the cold outreach more these days for connections and and just collaboration at the top,
Totally. Yeah.
just like you were talking about.
I love
So
mentoring too. I really have a heart for that. I've done some stuff with Techstars and done some judging for startup competitions. Really involved with some incubators across the US. And I do have this heart for startups because I just love taking a brand to life, right? Like this idea into the marketplace. It's a driver for me.
I love that. Well, Tay, I appreciate you. What a lovely conversation. We will most definitely stay in touch.
Definitely. We've got to
And
get you guys into the 12 Tables Collective. Naturally, there's so much to collaborate with. So
love it. Yeah,
let's do it.
I'm ready to eat.
You say
Br-
when. He's like, I'm signing contracts right now.
bring me to the table. I'm always ready.
Exactly. Pull up your seat.
All right,
Awesome.
Tay,
Thank you,
thank you
Armando.
so much. Y'all reach out. Very cool stuff. Do you have a podcast?
I do have a podcast. It's getting relaunched this summer.
Cool.
It's called Unhustled, and perhaps I'll message you the link, and then you can share it with your audience.
Will do. I love it. Tay, you have a good day.
You
I
too.
didn't even make that. It's right. It's just natural.
Tay, have a good day.
It just
What do you
starts coming
say?
out. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
And that was Spaghetti on the Wall, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by Leduc Entertainment. For your podcasting, social media, customer journey needs, we got you. And you can keep watching Spaghetti on the Wall anywhere, Spotify, Apple Music. Just keep watching, and we'll see y'all next time.